Man, the Super Nintendo is awesome. Just so many great games. So many great platformers, so many great racing games, so many great puzzle games, some damn solid arcade ports, except for the ones that don't matter. I just love the Super Nintendo. If only this thing could play games on CDs. But also couldn't, because that just ended up spawning one of the few 5th gen consoles to actually matter. Hey, wait a minute.
Hey, plumber boy, mustache man, your worst nightmare has arrived.
Ladies and gentlemen, meet the PlayStation 1, the newest addition to my family of game consoles. Oh yeah, I just have 4 of these things hooked up to my TV now. I would have been just fine with the Retron 5 at home and the Analog Pocket on the go, but anyways. My grandfather volunteers at a charity shop, and he likes to send me the game consoles that the shop receives. It's how I snagged this Xbox 360 and this here Wii. And also this NES Classic, but I don't have much reason to have it hooked up. One day, he gives me this box with a few Atari plug-and plays, and Amazon Fire. Yeah, good luck getting me to use one of those. And a PS1 Slim. Needless to say, just for that last bit, I was intrigued. Unfortunately, it didn't take long to realize that it was basically a paperweight, and long story short, I essentially assembled an entirely new one. All I was able to salvage was some screws, the disk drive, and the video cables. Everything else was sourced as separate parts on eBay. Hold on, let me just do this real quick, it's mandatory. Yeah, that hits the spot. Before we really begin, I want you guys to bear with me with this video quality. I don't have retro tank money, so my best bet for playing composite games on my flat screen without input lag is this cheap no-name upscaler I bought for like 20 bucks. It stretches out the games to widescreen, so I'll have to fix that in post, but aside from that, I think this will get me by for now. Anyway, if you clicked on this video expecting a deep, intensively thought-out retrospective on things I like about the PS1, who the hell do you think you're watching? No, you're not getting that. This is called GamingMarine's Game Rambles for a reason, and this is just going to be me rambling on about some things about the PS1 I feel like rambling about, with some games thrown in, starting with the controller. You remember how in my first video talking about my game collection, I said I got into this after my grandmother gifted me some random controllers? And with that, one grandmother gifting me some random game controllers for Christmas and a subsequent trip to the store she got them from later? Yeah, this is one of them. I know the slim PS1 shipped with DualShocks rather than these OGs, but this is what I have on hand at the moment, and it works for me. My earliest memories of traditional gaming was with a DualShock 3, so I at least know what to expect, but at the same time, man, it's a little funky going back to this thing. I mean, I'm holding a controller with thighs, yet this doesn't have 2 giant obstructions of my thumbs. And why is L2 and R2 so tiny? I mean, they're the same size as L1 and R1, but compared to later PlayStation controllers, or really any controller with a set of triggers, these may as well just be non-existent. And also, can I just say something? Am I the only one who's never really cared for PlayStation D-pads? It's fine, it works I guess, but it feels off using a D-pad that's molded like it's supposed to be 4 separate buttons, but fundamentally isn't. I mean, I get why Sony went this route, but I'd personally prefer something like on the Sega Genesis or Saturn, just a giant shield with a cross sticking out. Alright, I feel like I just pissed off a lot of people in the past 30 seconds, so let's talk about jewel cases instead. Yeah, why not? Before anybody asks, yes, I am aware that the first batch of PS1 games were originally released in these long boxes, as they're so called. I'm not buying those, because I like having all my games of a specific console in a consistent size, and how the hell am I supposed to fit those in this thing? Now, I just want to say that I'm a bit selective when it comes to what games I buy loose and what games I buy complete in box, and I say it depends on the format the game is stored on. Cartridges usually look perfectly fine stacked against a shelf. At worst, you gotta break out the IPA and Q-tips when you want to play them, or just blow into them if you don't know any better. Complete in box cartridges, on the other hand, the thing about those is that most cartridge games, especially if they were on an Atari or Nintendo console, were usually sold in cardboard boxes, so people back in the day felt justified in throwing that crap out. What that means for me is that rather than spending $700 on a loose copy of Shantae, or at an eye-bulging price, I'm spending, oh my god! Disc games are another story. These are fragile little things, so buying these in their plastic case at the very least is a given for me. Even then, it's usually not the end of the world for me if a game doesn't come with its instruction manual. As you get further along in history, it becomes more commonplace for games to have a dedicated tutorial section, so as much as I hate to say it, it's understandable that later games just come with a reference card for the controls, or in some cases nothing. Like, literally nothing. PS1 games, on the other hand, I prefer having both the jewel case and the manual, for a simple reason. The manuals double as the cover art. and that's it. It's at least fun to have something to page through every so often. Oh hey, this one still has a registration card inside. But what's that? You want a way to save your progress, but you don't want to put up with passwords, and we can't just put clock batteries in our games because this is a CD-based console? Here, have a wafer. Okay, flash memory is nothing new to me. Every mainline handheld console in the last 20 years or so has had SD card functionality or some other kind of removable media to save games. I have no problem with flash memory. It's just that the PS1's memory cards don't give you an awful lot of space to work with. To compare, I have a 32GB SD card on my Retron 5, mainly for ROM hacks and action replay codes. Analog Pocket, a micro SD card with 128GB. The console supports way more, but it's more than enough for what I need. The Wii, the original model at least, has an SD card slot, up to 128GB. I don't have one inserted, given that the Wii has its own built-in storage, but hey, the option is there. And the Xbox 360, a little more proprietary, but you can swap out the hard drive, and mine has 320GB. Now, with all that in mind, how much can you store on a PS1 memory card? Yeah, that's not a lot to work with. To be fair, it's not like you're going to be immediately filling up all that space, especially since a lot of early PS1 games didn't even give you the option to use a memory card and were limited to the old-fashioned passwords, like Doom, for instance. Technically 2 incredible games on one disc, with enough new content to basically make an entirely new one. It's called the Custom PlayStation Edition for a reason, after all. Absolutely phenomenal port. Still need a pen and paper on standby. But even if a game gives you the option to save, it's up in the air as to how much space it'll take up. A lot of the simpler games take up only a single block. In non-memory card speak, that's about 8 kilobytes, give or take.
Wow, get a load of this, turbo nerd!
Shut up. Some games take up more, and there's a few games like Hexen that take up an entire memory card just for one save file. Yikes. I do know about modern day solutions like those custom made memory cards where you can stick in a micro SD and manage a practically infinite number of virtual memory cards. Yeah, rather than just one giant memory card, because that's not how the PS1 works, unfortunately. But to be honest, none of the games I'm interested in take up enough space for that to be necessary, as far as I'm aware, so an old-fashioned one like this should be just fine for now. As a side note, my memory card is inexplicably a Japanese model. I swear I wasn't even intending for that. I was just looking on eBay for an OEM memory card, and the seller I bought this from was in Florida. It comes in the mail, and it turns out to be a Japanese memory card with Japanese saves on it. Not that it matters, PS1 memory cards are thankfully not region locked. It's just funny how stuff like that happens every so often. But hold on, what is my hobby supposed to be? Actually playing the games or just obsessing over the hardware? I think it's finally time I talk about a few of the games I currently own for this bad boy. Starting with Crusader, No Remorse, an isometric shooter that's been cited as an inspiration for the original Fallout. Yeah, I bet that's an eye-opener for some of you at home. Crusader takes place in a dystopian future where all the world's governments are controlled by big corporations. Hey, that sounds familiar. You fulfill your duties serving as a commando for this consortium. Or rather, you used to, given your squad was snuffed out by said consortium after failing to execute civilians. And so, in a move initially met with skepticism, you decide to turn over to the resistance and try to take down the very government you once worked for. This game's always a blast to revisit every so often, just blowing shit up and mowing down anybody who gets in your way. And you know what? For a port of a game with a notoriously complex control scheme, Crusader plays like a dream on the PS1. Hell, I'd even go as far to say it controls better than on PC. Sure, it still takes a bit to learn how everything works, and there's a lot of button combinations to keep in mind, especially for inventory management. Look at all these shortcuts. But you get used to it before long, and even as somebody who mainly plays games with a mouse and keyboard, I greatly prefer this compared to pressing F1 and having to study this. Even outside of the controls, this game just feels way more fluid to play on consoles. In the PC original, your movement feels like it's grid-based. Your character tends to snap into place when you stop moving, and the camera's jerky movement can be a bit disorienting. On PS1, however, it's freeform movement and smooth scrolling all the way. Overall, if this game seems up your alley, maybe consider taking the console peasant route. Next up, we got Super Puzzle Fighter 2 Turbo. Well, that's a bit of a total jump from the last game. This game is, well, a competitive puzzle game. Sort of like a souped-up Puyo Puyo. Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot that I'm a filthy Yankee. I meant Dr. Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine. It's pretty funny that I find interest in this game specifically, given that historically I'm not much of a fighting game person. From my perspective, these kind of games expect you to know an errands list worth of button combinations in order to get far. I know I just said I was fine with that with Crusader, but here it's a legitimate hurdle for me. Like, I start a match, I try to get a feel for the controls, and before long, I'm getting my ass handed to me. Even when I got the means to learn more, it just all goes over my head like, what? I know that sounds like a joke, right? Command & Conquer is fine, but Street Fighter's just too much? Yeah, okay, whatever you say, Gaming Marine. It's at the point where it's just a long-running joke with me and my friends to bash on Blaze Blue solely because I don't find it interesting in a genre I already don't really care for. But I don't know, realizing that I'm asexual and looking back on a game with moments like this...
Booby lady, you always have such nice, comfy airbags.
I don't know, maybe there's a point to be made there. But a puzzle game wearing a fighting game skin? Now that's how you get me to care. It's like wrapping medication with a slice of cheese. Anyway, what more needs to be said about Puzzle Fighter? Match gems to send garbage to your opponent and try to get rid of the garbage they send you. Really good time, as always. Unironically, in an alternate universe, I'd probably buy a PlayStation Classic solely for this game. Which is pretty depressing now that I'm reading that out loud. Well, that was quite the detour from what I usually play, so let's even things out a little by ending off with Road Rash. Nothing quite like risking your life speeding down a rural highway and beating the shit out of oncoming bikers. Literally. I'm mainly familiar with the Sega Genesis original from 1991, which was a rather choppy but still massively enjoyable hang-on lookalike with some hand-to-hand combat sprinkled in. And while I like the bright and colorful look of that game, for some reason, this game's more realistic and gritty look appeals to me way more. I'm just a sucker for this art style in general. Narc, Revolution X, Pit Fighter, Killing Time on 3DO, hell yeah. Give me some randos poorly pretending to do stuff in front of a green screen any day of the week, and I'm a happy guy. One of the big additions from the Genesis games is branching paths, which, this is a linear race here, so I doubt that really makes much of a difference. There's also a pseudo-social mechanic of sorts, where you can chat with other bikers and they'll react based on how you treat them in races. Pretty cool to see in a game from '94, but not much else to it. These portraits, though. I swear I've read some children's books with an art style very similar to this. Why is it everyone in this place so frickin' ugly? Man, my thoughts exactly. Milwaukee. Oh, and this is very important. This game lets you run over pedestrians at the finish line. How can you not like this? But other than that, this doesn't play much different from any other Road Rash game. Make it to the finish line by any means, buy new bikes as the races go on, and shout out a big ol' fuck 12 while you're at it. I don't think you can go wrong with any of the Road Rash games, but I can understand why people are nostalgic for this one specifically. Alright, seriously, I need to know, what was that book I'm thinking about? Holy shit, I haven't seen this in years! And that concludes everything I wanted to talk about with the PS1. It's funny that all the games I just talked about weren't even originally PS1 games to begin with. But you know what? I think that just goes to show how versatile the console's library can be. Even if you don't care all that much about the exclusives and just want someone to play some straightforward multi-platform games, the PS1 has it covered. And if it somehow doesn't have it covered, well, the Game Boy has Solitaire. Can't think of many other consoles with that going for it.
It may look like a harmless bagel toaster, but inside is a deadly donut.